Hey everyone, it's Anthony from Essentage, Tucson's premier accounting firm. Short video today about why you shouldn't be buying the economic hype and why now is the time for you to work on your emergency fund. So you've all heard the statistics on Americans and their savings and emergency funds. Well, a recent study found that about 60% of Americans didn't have $1,000 on hand in a savings fund for an emergency. That's a staggering number in and of itself, but consider this. Most emergencies or financial emergencies end up costing more than $1,000. So if 60% of Americans don't have that $1,000 or less for a $1,000 emergency, imagine what that number would possibly rise to if the financial emergency exceeds $1,000 in magnitude. So I said it in the intro to the video, and that is don't buy the hype. Don't buy the economic hype right now. Don't buy the hype about the stock market or the real estate market. The reality of things is that the average American is not accumulating significant wealth through the stock market and real estate markets right now. Yes, folks invest in the stock market and the real estate market, but that's not where the average American is accumulating the majority of their earnings or their net wealth. So this type of unrealistic hype we hear a lot about the economy, the real estate market, and the stock market, especially now during this COVID-19 pandemic, to me this is nothing more than propaganda aimed at pushing the average American to continue to consume financially at levels that's unsustainable and continue to take on burdensome debt. So as always, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news. I'm just trying to paint that realistic picture. We are in the middle of an economic adjustment, an economic downturn, and things aren't necessarily going to be great in the near term. Again, I understand that there's a lot of folks out there who want to be optimistic about the market, the economy, and real estate in general. Let's be honest, we are in a slowdown right now because of COVID-19, and there is going to be an adjustment period. So in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic fallout, what you can expect to see, and we're already seeing it now, is unemployment rise drastically. I'm a business owner, and I think about it from the perspective of a business owner. Business owners and businesses in general experience significant losses during this pandemic. Accordingly, once things stabilize, I don't necessarily expect them to be rushing out and expending money on large improvements, hiring back, gobs of staff. They're pretty much going to be in a mode where for the next little while they're trying to recoup some of the losses they experienced during the slowdown, and they're going to proceed with caution. So the question is what can you do, or what should you do at this point in time as an individual? My father used to have a saying that I still remember to this day. He used to say, "Son, sometimes it's so easy to be bad and it's just so hard to be good." And now's the time where we as individuals need to face that challenge. And the best way we can kind of practice that self-discipline is to really take this as an opportunity to focus on building up our emergency fund as individuals and even as businesses. So that fundamental strategy to building up your emergency fund, well, you can really think of it as what a lot of folks used to do in the post-World War II era. That's before today's technology, before the financial instruments and banking technology we had at our disposal today. And it wasn't uncommon during those times for everyone to have some sort of envelope or strongbox in their house where they would quietly stash away money here and there in case an emergency came up. Now, technology's changed, times have changed, but really the strategy for us to employ is no different than that original mentality from that post-World War II era. So how do you set up the emergency fund if you're a business? Or how do you, devote significant amounts of cash to the emergency fund if you're a business? Well, it all starts with having good bookkeeping and good financials. That's really the only way to know your profit margins, how much cash you have available, and ultimately what your operating expenses are on a month-to-month basis. From there, what we advise a lot of our clients to do is set up a separate bank account to start, for lack of a better term, stockpiling some of that cash or cash reserves for 2 to 3 months worth of operating reserves should something like COVID-19 strike and businesses be in a tight spot. Now I'm going to spend a little more time telling you how you can set up the emergency fund or enhance the emergency fund on a personal level. And again, this really starts with self-discipline. In some of our other videos, I've talked about how we have to kind of take on the responsibility and really take ownership as individuals in terms of our own financial health. Now, again, going back to that kind of old school strategy, whether it's a separate bank account or whether it's just some sort of separate financial instrument or mechanism for setting money aside, you as the individual have to take the initiative to set that money aside. I always recommend, and I've done this myself with my own family, there's really got to be buy-in at the family level. So if you have a spouse or you have children, the whole family's got to really buy into this mentality of setting money aside for that emergency fund. And I know what you're going to ask, yeah, but Anthony, where am I getting the money for this emergency fund? Okay, well, sure, you can explore other revenue sources, but the reality of the situation is that most of the funding for your emergency fund is going to have to come from you cutting back on certain expenses. So what does that really mean? Again, I've spoken about it in some of the previous videos. It really starts with setting up that budget for yourself individually or your household. And then from there, thinking about what you can do without or what you can kind of trim back on. Specifically, what a lot of folks do in order to kind of cut back or reallocate funds are activities that they undertake at home, both themselves and with their families. For example, they eat out or order in less often. During a time like this with COVID-19 going on, it's great to order out, have DoorDash deliver, and support a local restaurant. That being said, we all know that it is more expensive to order in using a service like DoorDash, who has to tack on their fee, and you then also have to pay for the food at the restaurant, tip for the driver. So introducing something like cooking at home more often can make a significant difference and free up some money for that emergency fund. Another thing, I read an article just today about how Starbucks revenues have dropped like this whopping 10% or something. I gotta be honest, I would have thought Starbucks revenues would have dropped like 80% in the last month, because with COVID-19 going on, pretty much the easiest thing you can do is just brew your own cup of coffee. And I get it. A lot of people love their Dunkin' Donuts, love their Starbucks, love their food out. And we of course want everybody to be able to take advantage of those simple pleasures in life. We all work hard. That being said, those tend to be the low-hanging fruit in terms of where you can start reallocating funds and building up that emergency fund. Now, I know what you're going to say to this last segment. You're going to say, Anthony, I've watched this video, but what you're telling me, it's all common sense. You're right, it is. But here's the thing, if it's common sense, then why don't all of us do it? Why are there those statistics out there about Americans struggling to maintain emergency funds, of $400, $1,000, $1,500? Again, the reality of it is we have so much more at our disposal these days. Yes, the fundamentals of that post-World War II era for saving for an emergency fund are the same. You don't need the little envelope you hide. You don't need to stash cash under your mattress. You can set it aside in a bank account. But what's really lacking is the self-discipline and taking the ownership as individuals and business owners. And yes, I myself have failed at times to stay super disciplined. But this video is just a reminder of how we can all exercise more initiative to build up our emergency funds. And I didn't get to this point of recognition without learning along the way, tripping, falling a couple times. But there are some great resources out there. There's some great books I've read along the way. If you're a business owner, definitely check out books like The E-Myth or Profit First, which was written by Mike Michalowicz. It's a really step-by-step guide for as a business, how you allocate money aside in that one account for these emergency funds. If you're an individual, there's a ton of great resources out there. I think it's been, maybe over 20 years since Dave Ramsey wrote The Total Money Makeover, and I'm not being a proponent of any one of these books over another. I'm just saying there's a lot of these guides out there, and there's a lot of information to kind of get you focused on how you can take these small steps to build up that emergency fund. So as always, feel free to leave your questions and comments in the area below. And here's what I'd really like to know. If you're out there and you have any great tips or tricks for how you and or your family set small bits of money aside for your emergency fund, share those. I always learn something new from other folks, and I'm sure some of the other folks watching this video or commenting below would love to hear those as well. So until next time, again, this is Anthony from Essentage, hoping everyone out there is staying safe and healthy.